So your scheduled tattoo is coming up and you might be freaking out a little bit. So let's talk about how you can prepare physically for the big day. Welcome back to Inkademic, everybody, your evidence-based source for all things tattoo, body modification, and more. I'm your host, the Professor, and on this episode, if you hadn't guessed it by now, we're talking about how you can best prepare for your next or maybe even first tattoo session. Now, I'm going to lay out for you my list of 5 key evidence-backed decisions, behaviors, whatever you want to call them, that will best prepare you for the experience of being tattooed. And as always, I like to be as transparent with you about how I come up with this content as possible. So for this topic, it started with looking at anecdotal suggestions from typically artists and clients. Now, I gathered as much of that as I could and then started boiling them down into broad categories and then just tossing out the ones that made absolutely no sense at all. There were more of those than you think. And if you want to see the original top 10 that I started out with, I put it in the description for your enjoyment. I then started trying to determine if there was any hard evidence for those things actually working. And that's what this video is. It's just that. And of course, as always, links to these sources in the description below. You should never just take my word for anything. Real quick, what you can take my word on is how great this shirt feels. So I was contacted by this company called Into the AM. They're a California-based clothing company, and they wanted to partner with little old me. So you might know me by now, and if so, you probably know that I need to dig into something deep before I put my stamp of approval on it. So they sent me some shirts to try, and I gotta say, they're great. They're soft, they fit well. I'd call myself a medium to large, and they're just the right shape for me, although the quarantine a bit larger than that now. Anyway, they get a thumbs up from me, so if that stamp of approval is something you value, or if you just like the shirt, check the description for a link that'll save you some cash when you order using it, and of course, a little kickback from me as well. Transparency! Anyway, let's start off by setting the stage and calling this what it really is. You are voluntarily paying someone to injure you, often for long periods of time and on multiple occasions. It's just the nature of the beast. There's no way around it, at least not right now. Not just that, they are, for all intents and purposes, permanently altering your appearance. On top of that, it's with a design that, if you listen to some of the more negative voices out there, is obviously something you're going to grow out of at best and be embarrassed of at worst. And you're stressing out a little bit now just hearing that, aren't you? And yeah, it's literally and technically true. Now, presuming you still want to go through with it, number 1, stay hydrated and moisturized. Staying hydrated means you're just overall healthier, really, so it's never a bad thing. But remember that a tattoo is trauma, so staying hydrated throughout the process will give your body the best shot at dealing with it effectively. Now, why do I say both hydrated and moisturized? Well, the Mayo Clinic points out that drinking extra fluids, i.e. staying hydrated, doesn't necessarily translate to keeping your skin hydrated and moisturized. So let's back up for a second. How about this as a metaphor, right? Your skin is like phyllo dough. So while it's moisturized, it's pliable. But if it gets too dry, then you lose your shot at being star baker. And if drinking extra water doesn't necessarily hydrate your skin, what does? Well, here are a few suggestions. Avoid prolonged contact with hot water. Big one right there. Use gentle soaps and cleansers. When choosing those soaps and cleansers, avoid the ones that contain deodorants and alcohol and fragrances and things called retinoids or alpha-hydroxy acid. Just look on the label. Moisturize immediately after bathing, showering, or washing your hands. Use a humidifier if you need to. And if you're going out in the cold, wear gloves. I mean, it's really as simple as that. Of course, if your skin is chronically dry, then you should talk to a medical professional, as always. Number 2, be sober and uninjured. In other words, don't get drunk, high, or sunburned beforehand. Or after, remember? Some of this is just straight up policy at a lot of shops. I mean, they won't tattoo you if you've been drinking or if you exhibit signs of being under the influence of anything, really. And that's not just for your safety, it's also for the safety of the artist. I mean, imagine trying to paint on a canvas that's moving. It's no good. And that's not even getting into how mind-altering substances like alcohol or other drugs, or heck, even technically caffeine, can impact your decision-making ability. I mean, I think we've all probably seen The Hangover, right? Now again, most reputable shops and artists will not work on you if you are clearly not sober, but best not to put yourself in that situation in the first place, right? And no, having one drink to calm your nerves ahead of time does not get a pass. and this is just me talking here. If you aren't ready to get your work done without a little bit of extra help, maybe you're not ready to get it done to begin with. That said, your best bet is to avoid getting too worked up in the first place, but we will come back to that. As for the be uninjured part, going back to the painting reference, you wouldn't want to paint on a torn or burned canvas either, right? Not only will artists turn you away if you have an injury where you're wanting to get your work placed, but if they did decide to do it, you have no guarantee it's going to look how you expect after you heal from that initial injury, not to mention the tattoo itself. Number 3, address your basic needs. In other words, eat and sleep. And this is doubly true for anyone that might have trouble regulating their blood sugar. Right? You want to be, more or less, as baseline as you can be when sitting for a tattoo because, like I keep saying, at the most basic level, it is a traumatic experience, literally. And as for getting enough sleep, it's important not to underestimate just how crucial getting enough restful sleep is, both for your mood and for your ability to heal. And if you want to know more about sleeping with a fresh tattoo, did a whole video on that too. Oh, and if you know yourself to get hangry, do your artist a favor and do not put them through that. If you do get hungry, I found it's becoming more and more common for shops to have snacks and nibbles around, like those mini bags of chips and whatnot. And bottled water, too. Just don't, walk into your session with a whole pizza, at least not without asking first. Number 4, practice good hygiene. So this one is just as much for the artist as it is for you, I think. Shower ahead of time, wear deodorant, be clean, and wear clean clothes. Not only does this reduce the risk of cross-contamination, but it provides your artist with a clean canvas, as it were. If you're getting tattooed in your armpit or something, which is not as unusual as it may sound, and you're questioning whether or not you should put on deodorant prior to the tattoo session, here is what you do. Contact your artist and ask them if there are any special instructions given the location of your soon-to-be tattoo. When my sleeve was getting up into the armpit area, I did exactly that. I said, should I keep deodorant away from that spot? He said, no. Your artist will clean the area they're working on beforehand. And again, if there are any special instructions for you, they are likely to let you know. Finally, number 5, stay calm. The one that all of these others are really there to accomplish. And this is a tough one though, Staying hydrated? Sure, there are pretty basic things you can do to make that happen, and it's more or less universal, but not getting anxious? I can't think of a single thing that works for everybody. And that said, it's really important. Probably the most important thing. Beyond just making sure that you're not letting your anxiety manifest physical symptoms that can make it more difficult to get tattooed in the first place, anything that makes it harder on the artist to do their job, basically. There's evidence that stress can make it harder for your body to heal, making an already stressful situation worse during and after the fact. So for this one, you do you. Presuming it doesn't fly in the face of the second one, right? If I can give one little bit of advice here, I think taking your time to do your research on the shops and the artists, really putting in the work to make sure that you are set up to get just what you want by someone you trust in a space that is safe and professional can go a long way to reducing stress. You want to make sure you are getting work done at a shop that takes sanitation and hygiene very seriously. Don't just assume that they do because they're in a shop and not in a basement. And there we have it. My 5 tips for preparing for your next, or again, probably first, tattoo. Stay hydrated and moisturized, be sober and uninjured, address your basic needs like eating and getting enough sleep, practice good hygiene, and stay calm. Easy, right? And one final thing, and you've heard me say this before, it is still entirely possible to overthink the whole thing. But at least now you know what you can do to prepare. And if you want to take a look at just what you might expect throughout the healing process, you are in luck. If you found this informative and entertaining don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell, like the video, tell your mom, do whatever you gotta do. Until next time.